You know, when you get old, you start seeing life like an old movie reel. Flickering memories, some bright, some dark, all spinning inside your mind. My name's Arthur, but most folks just call me Grandpa Art. And tonight, I want to tell you about the biggest mistake I ever made, and the secret behind the money that tore my family apart. I still remember the day my son, Jacob, stopped looking at me like a father and started seeing me like a bank. He used to be a sweet boy once. Freckles, messy blonde hair, always asking questions about everything. Dad, why does the sky turn orange at sunset? Dad, do you think I can be like you when I grow up? Those questions were once my favorite sound. But when money enters a man's heart, love gets quiet. After his mother passed, Jacob changed. I can't blame him entirely. Losing her was like losing the sun in our house. She was the glue that held our world together. And without her, we both came undone. But while I drowned myself in work, Jacob drowned himself in debts. By the time I sold my business, a small hardware store in Minnesota, I had exactly $1 million sitting in the bank. To most folks, that's a dream. But to me, it was a ticking bomb, a secret waiting to explode. Because that money wasn't really mine. I remember the day I first got it. 10 years back, I did a job for a man named Victor Kane. A name that still makes my stomach twist. He wasn't a businessman, not really. He was the kind of man who smiled with his mouth but not his eyes. He offered me a loan for my store. No questions asked. I was desperate then. The store was dying, and my wife was sick. I took it. But the deal came with shadows. When my wife died, I never paid Victor back. I just vanished, moved towns, changed my name, and that money, his money, sat there waiting, growing, cursing everything it touched. When Jacob found out about my savings, his eyes lit up like a man seeing gold for the first time. Dad, he said one night over dinner, you've worked too hard your whole life. Why not let me handle things now? He said it with that fake smile, the one kids use when they think their old man's too tired to notice. But I noticed. I always did. A week later, I went to check my account. Balance, $0. Just like that, gone. My whole life's work, my secret, my guilt, all vanished. I remember my hand shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. I called the bank, thinking it was a mistake. But it wasn't. My son had transferred everything. Every single cent. When I confronted him, he didn't even look sorry. He stood there, leaning against the kitchen counter with that same cold smirk Victor Kane once had. You won't need it, Dad, he said. You've had your life. It's my turn now. And then he walked away. I should have shouted, hit him, anything. But I just stood there, staring at the empty chair where his mother used to sit. That's when I realized, sometimes, heartbreak doesn't come loud. It comes quiet, like the sound of a door closing forever. For weeks, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even report it. What could I say? My son stole from me? Who'd believe that a father would sit quietly while his own blood betrayed him? But one morning I got a letter. No return address, just a folded piece of paper slipped under my door. Inside were 5 words written in red ink. He owes me my money. I froze. My heart felt like it stopped. Victor Kane was still alive. And he wanted what was his. And now Jacob, my foolish, greedy boy, had just stolen from the wrong man. You ever wonder what you'd do if someone you loved betrayed you like that? Would you forgive them? Or would you let them face the storm they created? Tell me in the comments below, because what happened next changed both our lives forever. If you're still with me, make sure to subscribe and stick around, because what's coming next is darker than you can imagine. That night, I packed a small bag, old clothes, some cash, and the photograph of my wife smiling under the autumn leaves. I knew I couldn't go to the police. I couldn't tell anyone where the money came from. All I could do was find Jacob before Victor's men did. I got in my truck, the same one I've had since 1984, and drove through the empty backroads. The wind howled through the cracks, and the road stretched like a ribbon of regret. By the time I reached the city, I was trembling. Not from fear, but from age. My hands didn't work like they used to. My heart didn't beat steady anymore. But a father's love, it doesn't die easy. Not even when it's been betrayed. I found Jacob's car outside a hotel. Fancy. New. Something he couldn't afford even with a lifetime of savings. I walked up to the door and knocked. He opened it, shirt half-buttoned, phone in hand, talking to someone about investments. When he saw me, his face turned white. "Dad, where's the money, Jacob?" I said quietly. He tried to smile. "It's complicated." But before he could finish, someone knocked on his door. He froze. 3 hard knocks. Then a voice, low, sharp, and all too familiar. "Jacob Reed, we need to talk." My blood went cold. That voice was Victor Kane. And in that moment, standing outside that hotel room, I knew my sins had finally come home. I can still hear those 3 knocks in my head, like thunder that never stops echoing. Jacob froze, his phone slipping from his hand. He looked at me, the same eyes that once begged me to read him bedtime stories, now wide with fear. "Dad, who's that?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I'd spent years running from that voice. Another knock, louder this time. "Jacob Reed, open the door." Victor's tone hadn't changed in all these years. Calm, polite, but sharp as a knife hidden in silk. I grabbed Jacob's arm. "Listen to me," I said. "You have to go. Out the back window. Now." "What? Why?" "Because you just stole a devil's money." He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "What are you talking about? You're the one who earned that money." "No, Jacob," I said, my voice shaking. "That money never belonged to me. It belonged to a man who doesn't forgive debts. Ever." Before he could argue, the doorknob twisted. Victor's voice slid through the crack. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Jacob panicked. He started for the bathroom window, fumbling with the latch. I turned just as the door burst open. There he was, Victor Kane, older, grayer, but still wearing that same expensive black coat. 2 men stood behind him, both built like walls. And that smile, that calm, cold smile. "Arthur," he said softly, "you've aged." My throat went dry. "Victor." He looked around the room, his eyes landing on Jacob. "And this must be your boy, the one who emptied your account." Jacob stepped back. "You can't come in here." Victor chuckled. "Oh, I can. Because that $1 million your father kept? It wasn't his to give. And when you took it, you inherited his debt." He walked closer, the heels of his shoes clicking against the cheap hotel floor. Jacob looked at me, terrified. "Dad, please, tell him. Tell him it's all a mistake." But I couldn't lie anymore. "It's true, son," I said quietly. "I took that money from him years ago. I thought I'd never see him again." Victor tilted his head. "And yet here we are, like a family reunion, isn't it?" One of his men handed him a small notebook. Victor opened it, glanced at a page, then closed it again. "I'm a reasonable man, Arthur," he said. "I don't want your life. I just want what's mine. The $1 million and the interest." "Interest?" Jacob asked. Victor smiled faintly. 10 years. 10%. That's $2 million now. Jacob's face went pale. "We don't have that kind of money." Victor raised a finger. "You should have thought of that before you took it." He turned to me. "Arthur, you have 48 hours. Bring me my money, or I'll collect it another way." And with that, he left, calm, polite, like he'd just ordered coffee instead of a threat. When the door shut, Jacob collapsed on the floor. "Dad, what the hell did you get us into?" I sank into the chair, my chest heavy. "You think I wanted this, Jacob? I took that money to save your mother's life. I would have given anything to buy her one more day. But after she died, I couldn't give it back. I was too broken and too ashamed." He looked at me, anger mixing with guilt. "So you ruined both of us." I wanted to argue, but he wasn't wrong. Every sin I buried had finally dug itself out. We sat there in silence, the sound of the city outside muffled and far away. Finally, Jacob stood up, wiping his face. "We'll figure this out," he said. "How?" "I know some people. I can invest what's left. Double it, maybe triple it." I laughed bitterly. That's exactly what got you here in the first place. Thinking money fixes everything. He clenched his fists. You think your moral speeches help? You lied to me my whole life. Because I wanted to protect you, I shouted. I didn't want you to grow up knowing your father made a deal with the devil. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. And just like that, I was alone again. Just an old man in a cheap hotel room, haunted by his own blood. That night, I barely slept. Every creak, every whisper outside sounded like Victor's men coming to drag me away. At dawn, I got up and walked to the window. The sky was painted gold, the same color as the morning my wife died. I touched her ring on my finger and whispered, I'm sorry, Linda. I'm so sorry. Around noon, my phone buzzed, an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Arthur, Victor's voice purred. I hope you're working on my payment. I don't have it, I said. Oh, I know. But your son, he's making quite the effort. I must admit, he's ambitious. Reminds me of someone. What did you do to him? Nothing. Yet. But he's playing a dangerous game with the wrong people. I suggest you find him. Before I do. The line went dead. I rushed downstairs, grabbed my truck keys, and hit the road. Jacob wasn't answering his phone. The guilt in my chest was unbearable. Every mile I drove felt heavier than the last. I'd spent years running from my past, but now it was chasing my son. By evening, I found out where he was. An old acquaintance told me he'd gone to meet some investors at a rundown warehouse by the docks. I drove there as the sun dipped behind the horizon. The air smelled like rust and salt. As I parked, I saw shadows moving inside, 3 men, one of them Jacob. He was holding a small briefcase, trying to sound confident. Look, I can get you the rest tomorrow, he said. One of the men laughed. Tomorrow doesn't pay our boss tonight. I stepped forward, heart pounding. Jacob, I shouted. He turned, and that split second of distraction cost him everything. One of the men swung at him, knocking him to the ground. I ran in, grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, and swung wildly. Pain exploded in my shoulder, but I didn't stop. I heard someone yell, "Old man's crazy," before they ran off into the night. When it was over, I knelt beside Jacob. He was bleeding from his lip, trembling. Dad, he whispered. I didn't mean for this to happen. I know, I said, holding his face, but we're out of time. He's coming for both of us. And in that moment, as the waves crashed against the pier, I realized the truth. I couldn't save my money, and maybe I couldn't save my son, but I could save his soul, if I was willing to lose everything else. The night after the fight at the docks, the world felt smaller, colder. I drove with Jacob slumped in the passenger seat, his head resting against the window, blood drying on his chin. He didn't say much, and neither did I. The only sound was the low hum of the truck's old engine and the waves echoing behind us. We pulled into a deserted rest stop a few miles outside town. The fluorescent light above flickered like it was running out of life, kind of like me. Jacob finally broke the silence. Dad, he muttered. What kind of man was he? That Victor guy. I sighed. The kind that never forgets a debt. The kind who'll smile at your wedding and send flowers to your funeral. Jacob turned toward me, eyes dark. Then why take his money? Because I was desperate, I said softly. Your mom needed surgery. The hospital bills were drowning us. I thought I could fix everything just once. But deals like that, they don't end when the check clears. They end when someone's dead. He swallowed hard, staring out at the highway lights. So now he wants his pound of flesh. Exactly. We sat there for a long time before I spoke again. I tried to protect you, Jacob. I never told you where the money came from because I didn't want this darkness touching you. But it seems like it found you anyway. He clenched his jaw. You can't protect me anymore, Dad. It's too late for that. I wanted to argue, to remind him that no matter how old he was, he'd always be my boy, but I didn't. Because he was right. I couldn't protect him anymore. Not from this. The next morning, we hit the road again. The plan, if you could call it that, was simple. Drive south, disappear, start over somewhere new. But every time I looked in the rearview mirror, I half expected to see Victor's black car following us. Somewhere around noon, Jacob pulled out his phone. "I've been thinking," he said. "If we can't pay him back, maybe we can expose him. Go to the feds. Tell them everything." I shook my head. "You don't get it. Victor doesn't just bribe people, he owns them. He's got cops, lawyers, politicians. If you speak his name in the wrong place, you disappear." Jacob frowned. "Then what? Just keep running until he finds us?" I didn't answer. I didn't have one. We stopped at a small diner in the middle of nowhere. The kind where the coffee's burnt and the waitress calls everyone hon. While Jacob ordered food, I went to the bathroom to wash my face. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back. Tired eyes, gray hair sticking out from under a worn cap. And for the first time, I whispered to my reflection, "Maybe this is how it ends, Art. Paying the price you dodged all these years." When I walked back out, Jacob was gone. My heart nearly stopped. His phone was still on the table, next to his half-eaten sandwich. I ran outside, scanning the lot. Then I saw him, talking to a man near a black car. Victor's car. I froze, my pulse hammering. The man wasn't Victor, it was one of his enforcers. A tall, bald guy with a scar down his cheek. Jacob was handing him something, a flash drive. I crept closer, hiding behind a parked truck. I heard bits of their conversation. "Proof," Jacob said. "Files, emails, payments. Everything your boss did. If he touches my dad again, the world will see it." The man smirked. "You think you can blackmail Victor Kane?" "Not blackmail," Jacob said. "A trade. He gets the drive when we're safe." I couldn't believe it. My son, who once couldn't even fix a leaky faucet without calling me, was now playing a dangerous game with a man like Victor. I wanted to scream, to run out there and drag him away, but I didn't, because for the first time, I saw something new in his eyes. Courage. Broken, reckless courage. But courage nonetheless. The man took the drive and got into the car. Jacob came back, breathing hard. "What the hell was that?" I demanded. He wiped his face. "Insurance. I found stuff online, news clippings, leaked reports. Victor's been laundering money through shell companies for years. That drive has everything I could gather. If anything happens to us, I made sure it'll go public." "Jacob, you just signed our death warrant," I said. He looked at me, eyes trembling. "Or maybe I just gave us a chance. That night, we hid out at an old cabin I used to visit with your grandma, back before everything fell apart. The air smelled like pine and rain. It almost felt peaceful, like the world outside had stopped existing. But inside, we both knew the storm was just catching its breath. We sat by the fireplace. Jacob stared into the flames. "Dad," he said quietly, "do you ever think about Mom?" I smiled sadly. "Every day." He nodded. "I used to blame you for her death. I thought if you'd made more money, she could have had better treatment." My chest tightened. I blamed myself too. That's why I took Victor's deal. I thought I could outsmart fate. But you can't buy your way out of guilt. Jacob's voice broke. "I'm sorry I stole from you." I looked at him for a long time, and for the first time in years, I saw the little boy again, the one who used to hold my hand crossing the street. "I know," I said softly, "and I forgive you." He reached over and hugged me, really hugged me, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. But peace never lasts in stories like mine. Just before dawn, I woke to headlights cutting through the trees. 2 black SUVs pulled up outside the cabin. I heard the crunch of boots on gravel. Victor Kane stepped out, flanked by his men, holding that same calm smile. Jacob looked at me, terrified. "They found us." I nodded slowly. "I know." Victor's voice carried through the cold morning air. "Arthur, you've made this so much harder than it needed to be. Let's finish this." I stood up, my knees weak but my resolve strong. I opened the door and stepped out into the light, facing the man I'd been running from for 10 long years. "Victor," I said quietly, "if it's me you want, let him go." He smirked. "Oh, Arthur, this isn't about you anymore." And that's when I realized the $1 million, the debts, the lies, none of it mattered now. because this wasn't just about money. It was about vengeance. The cold air bit into my skin as I stepped out of the cabin. Victor Kane stood in front of me, dressed in black from head to toe, his silver hair slicked back, his gloved hands clasped like a man about to deliver a sermon. His men spread out behind him, their faces unreadable, their guns hidden but obvious. He smiled faintly. 10 years, Arthur. 10 years, and you never once thought to pay me back. I was almost impressed. I kept my voice steady. I told you, Victor. The money's gone. My son took it. Oh, I know, he said, smirking. Your son has been quite busy. He even tried to scare me with that little flash drive of his. Jacob froze beside me. So you got it. Victor nodded. I did. And I must say he's got spirit. Foolish, but spirit nonetheless. Reminds me of someone. He looked directly at me. Enough games, Victor, I said, my tone shaking with anger. What do you want? I told you already, he said. What's mine? But perhaps I'm being unfair. After all, you and I share more history than your son knows. Something in his voice made my stomach twist. What are you talking about? Victor took a slow step closer, his eyes glinting in the dawn light. You really don't remember, do you? He asked softly. Your wife, Linda. I froze. My heart started pounding so hard it hurt. Don't you dare say her name, I warned. Oh, but I will, Victor said, his voice low and deliberate. Because before she was your wife, Arthur, she was mine. I felt the world tilt beneath me. My breath caught. What? I whispered. Victor smiled like a man savoring a cruel memory. It was years before you met her. We were young. She was beautiful, kind, fragile. I loved her, Arthur, more than I've ever loved anyone. But she left me. She ran off with you. I shook my head. That's not true. Oh, it's very true, he said, almost whispering. She left me and she took something with her. A necklace, worth more than anything I owned. I spent years searching, but I never found her again. Until one day, I saw a photo in the paper. You two, standing in front of that little hardware store, smiling like life had forgiven you. My knees went weak. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself. So you came after me, I said. Not just you, he said coldly. I came for what she took, and when she died, you were the only thing she left behind. I thought I'd take something from you too, your piece. He leaned forward. So I gave you the money. I wanted to see if you'd hang yourself with it. And you did. For a long moment I couldn't speak. Everything I'd built my life on, love, guilt, sacrifice, suddenly felt like a lie. Jacob stepped forward, his voice shaking. You're lying. Victor turned to him slowly. Am I? Ask your father why he never told you where the money came from. Ask him why he disappeared after your mother's death. He wasn't grieving, boy. He was hiding. Jacob's eyes darted to me, confusion and hurt fighting for space. Dad? Is that true? I couldn't look at him. Jacob, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who Victor really was until later. You just what? Jacob shouted. You took money from the man who loved Mom? I didn't know, I yelled. She never told me. And when I realized, it was too late. Victor's smirk returned. Now you understand, Arthur. This isn't about money. It's about justice. The word tasted like poison in his mouth. I stepped closer, trembling. Justice? You destroyed my family. You haunted me for years. My wife died thinking she'd escaped you. Victor's face hardened. No one escapes me. He raised his hand. His men moved forward. Jacob stepped in front of me. If you're taking anyone, take me. Victor blinked, surprised. Brave, but foolish. Jacob's voice cracked. You wanted revenge? Then take it on me. I stole the money. Not him. I grabbed Jacob's shoulder. No, son. Don't. He turned to me, tears in his eyes. You spent your whole life paying for your mistakes. Let me pay for mine. Victor stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fine, he said. But payment comes in many forms. He motioned to his men. Bring him. They grabbed Jacob by the arms. I lunged forward, shouting, but one of the men shoved me back to the ground. Pain shot through my ribs. "Stop!" I gasped. "Please! He's my son." Victor walked closer, crouching down beside me. "You took everything from me, Arthur. Now, I'll take what you love most." He stood up and turned away. "Wait!" I screamed. "Victor, please, don't do this." But the sound of the SUVs starting drowned out my voice. They drove off into the fog with my son inside. I lay there in the dirt, broken and helpless, watching the taillights fade into the distance like dying embers. My hands shook as I tried to stand. Every breath burned. In that moment, I felt the same pain I did the day I buried Linda. That hollow ache of losing someone you'd give your life to protect. But something inside me changed that morning. For years, I'd run from my past. I'd hidden, begged, regretted. Not anymore. If Victor Kane wanted vengeance, he was about to meet the man he created. I wiped the blood from my mouth and whispered to myself, "This time, I finish it." I packed a few things, grabbed the small revolver I'd kept buried in the truck's glove compartment, and drove into the rising sun. I didn't have a plan, just one mission: bring my son back or die trying. As the miles passed, I felt something strange, clarity. The kind that only comes when a man's got nothing left to lose. The money didn't matter anymore. The guilt didn't matter. Only Jacob did. And as the wind roared against the truck windows, I could almost hear Linda's voice, soft, forgiving. "Don't fail him, Art. Not again." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel and whispered back, "I won't." The hunt had begun. That night still plays in my head like a movie that won't stop. I can still smell the rain, feel the chill of the wind, and hear my old pickup truck groaning under the storm. I'd been driving for hours when I finally found him. My son, Daniel. He was hiding out in a cheap motel off Route 9. The kind of place where the paint peels off the walls and every room smells like cigarette smoke and regret. I knocked on his door, 3 slow knocks like I used to when he was little. He opened it. And for a second, I saw my boy again. Not the greedy man who'd stolen from me, but the same kid who once ran to me after scraping his knees, crying, "Daddy, don't be mad." But his eyes, they were different now. Empty, fearful. "Dad," he whispered, his voice trembling. "They're after me. I didn't know. I swear." He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hands were shaking as he tried to close the blinds. "They said they'd kill me if I didn't give it back," he said. "I already spent some, I can't." I grabbed his shoulders. "Listen to me, son. I know who they are. And I know why they're here." He looked up at me, confused. You know them?" I nodded slowly. "Because 40 years ago that money belonged to them. I stole it first." His face went pale. The truth hit him harder than any slap could. "All these years," I said, "I tried to be a good father. I built a life out of that sin and told myself I did it for you. But the truth is, I just didn't want to be poor again. I let greed become our inheritance." He sat down on the edge of the bed, his hands over his face. "So I'm paying for your mistakes." I shook my head. "No, son. You're paying for mine and yours. But maybe we can end this together." I didn't sleep that night. I waited. Around 3 a.m., there was a knock on the door. 3 men, black coats, cold eyes. The leader, tall, bald, with a scar across his lip, stepped inside. "Mr. Walker," he said, "you've got something that belongs to us." Daniel tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "No, son. Let me handle this." I reached into my coat pocket and placed a small, dusty envelope on the table. Inside it were the deeds to my house, the last of my savings, and a note that said, "Paid in full." The man stared at it, then at me. "You think this covers 40 years of silence?" I looked him in the eyes. "No, but it's all I have left. And if you still want blood, take mine, not his." Daniel's voice cracked. "Dad, no." I turned to him. "You wanted the money so bad, son. Now you see what it costs." The leader studied me for a long moment, then slowly picked up the envelope. His eyes softened just a little. "You got guts, old man," he muttered. "We'll call it even." And then, just like that, they left. The door closed. The silence returned. And my son, my broken, terrified son, fell to his knees. He buried his face in my chest and sobbed, "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." I wrapped my arms around him, the same way I did when he was 5. And for the first time in decades I felt peace. Weeks passed. We sold the house, moved into a small apartment near the lake. We didn't have much, just old furniture and new honesty. Daniel got a job, started rebuilding his life from scratch. One evening, he came home from work, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Dad," he said, smiling softly, "it's not much, but I'm happy." I looked out at the sunset and said, "Son, happiness isn't what you buy. It's what you make peace with." He nodded, tears glimmering in his eyes. "You really forgive me?" I smiled. "Forgiveness isn't earned, son. It's given." Now, I sit here, an old man with nothing left to hide. And maybe that's the real wealth I'd been searching for all along. I lost a fortune, but I found my son. Money can build walls, but forgiveness builds bridges. You know, folks, people always ask me, "Jack, do you ever regret stealing that money?" And my answer's always the same, every day. But if I hadn't, I wouldn't have learned what truly matters. So if you're listening to me right now, and you've got a grudge with your father, your mother, your kids, don't wait for tragedy to teach you forgiveness. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize love was all you ever needed. That's my story, son. That's my truth. I'm not proud of it, but it's mine. And maybe, just maybe, if one person out there learns from my mistakes, then it was worth it. He looks directly at the audience, his eyes watery but calm. Thank you for listening to an old man's confession. And if you're still here, take a moment, drop a comment below. Tell me one thing you'd forgive someone for if you had the chance. Because sometimes, speaking forgiveness aloud is the first step toward healing. Soft piano fades. Grandpa's voice lowers to a whisper. "Good night, my friend. And thank you for letting me finally rest."